that you say, hey, it was stolen here in the United States, sir?
Hwang Kyo-ahn, former prime minister, went to CPAC, and he was desperately looking for help. And he met Mike Lindell there, and Mike called me and said, would you talk to their election team? I talked to their election team, and they said, please, yes, come out and help. We need your help. So I flew to South Korea before their early days of voting. They have 2 early days of voting, and then there's a break, and then they have the election day, expecting to, like, being all Mr. Data Analysis guy, you know, gather all the data, download, analyze, and I was doing that. But I also, in between, I was traveling, visiting all their polling stations, looking at all their systems, getting the overall lay of the land, the overall flow, as you put it. And we visited, we learned about the NEC, we learned about AWeb, so much we could talk about. But basically, the elections, their early voting is similar to our early voting. You lose chain of custody in multiple ways, especially through the mail, et cetera. So that's a big cheating mechanism. So that's very much same as us. And then on election day, though, the Korean NEC, it's called the National Election Commission, gave us a gift on a silver platter. They under-delivered ballots to many of the conservative polling stations, like 140 of the polling stations, didn't get enough ballots. And so then the people were saying, well, give us more ballots. And the NEC said, we already sent you enough, which is kind of a symptom that they had a lot of fraud going on, too. A lot of people voted who weren't supposed to vote. So they were saying, give us more ballots. And the NEC said, no, we're going to just leave it right here. We're going to count the ballots the way they are. So if you know how Koreans live, they live in these groups of very tall buildings, and their polling place is right at the bottom. And so when they weren't going to provide more ballots, it's like 10,000 people just come down and surround this building and say, we're not going to give you our ballots until you give us enough ballots so we can all vote. So I was at that first situation where that happened, and I was there with Hwang Kyo-ahn. And it is an amazing thing to see 10,000 people all come and gather together, and they basically said to the government, we're not giving you any ballots until you give us enough so we can all vote. So I show up at the scene, and they see me as like the American coming to the rescue, and you're USA, USA, and I'm coming in, and they really are desperate now. And they're desperate because they've lost their presidency, they've lost their, through a coup, they've lost their National Assembly now. And so what's happened is there's nothing, their courts are corrupt, they're desperate. We need intervention. And this is South Korea. These are our allies. These are people we shed blood for and fought for, and we have a very strong alliance. And we can get to the AWeb thing in a minute, but that's essentially what's happened. And what's amazing for me is I got to experience that whole process beginning to end.
Hang on one second. I just want to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about this coup. I mean, South Korea is the one nation. We did fight in South Korea with them, but they're the one nation that really, Australia to a degree, they had our back in Vietnam. I mean, the South Koreans have been allies. I've been fortunate enough, both in the military and then later in business, to spend a significant amount of time in South Korea, and it doesn't come any better than that. They don't come in as better people. This whole initial thing started because I guess the president, prime minister before, they were conservatives, it had problems with stolen elections. Remember, they had that whole emergency. Then they were shut down. They said, oh, it was trying to be a coup. This whole thing has been metastasizing now for a couple of years. Why does it seem that the United States is not somehow getting involved here to the degree that even Ambassador Tan, Morris Tan, we found out last night, is being held as a prisoner in the country? What is it about us that here with one of our top allies, I would argue our best ally, we're not getting engaged in trying to get to the bottom of this CCP-dominated stealing that's going on?
So Steve's asking the question here is that you have this long-standing relationship through Vietnam that we've had with it, not to mention our business relationship with South Korea,
yes,
the ongoing relationship that has been a great development for both nations. We have Morris Tan now, Morris Tan still sitting
yes,
there, the former
yes,
U.S. ambassador,
yeah,
is a political prisoner and is seeking help. And then we have the prime minister coming over. What is it? Why are the U.S. shouldn't intervene? Where are we with that? What do you see on that? You were boots on the ground. You saw it.
So what you need to understand is that they had an election in 2024, and they elected a president who was an honest guy. And when he was in office, he suddenly discovered all this fraud in their government. So he declared martial law and tried to seize all the computers from the elections and all the servers. And that lasted only 3 hours, because then the National Assembly got together 3 hours later and arrested him. And now he's in prison. His name is Yoon. And so a lot of these gatherings, you'll hear the people shouting, Yoon again, Yoon again. That's what they're saying. They're saying they want their real president back. So what happened is then they put in a leftist president a year ago. And then this election, they put in now a leftist federal assembly. They don't have, the courts are corrupt. They don't have any recourse.
That's the equivalent of our Congress.
Exactly.
Right.
And so the people feel desperate. They don't have any recourse. They need American to say, hey, this is not okay. And by the way, while you're at it, take out AWEB, which is this international organization that basically exports election fraud all around the world.
Wait, explain AWEB for the audience, please.
So AWEB is the Association of World Election Bodies. It has about 120 member countries, and it was started by Soros, funded by USAID. It just got cut pretty good last year. But basically, they export electronic machines and technology around the world to manipulate elections, and it's right there. It's kind of like a satellite of you think about South Korea, then you got North Korea, then you've got China. China uses South Korea as its hub to spread it around, because
so it's an export hub.
It's an export hub. It's right there. It's
for
close
election
proximity
rigging.
for election rigging. And so South Korea they're not just coming to us saying, please save us, please save us. They're also saying, we want to fight with you. We want to help you to get rid of this as well.
But you said earlier that this had an interconnectivity where it was a good coing of a working relationship where what we see there will help us people see here what we need to see. So explain that.
Well, a lot of people in America still think all this election fraud stuff is a conspiracy theory. And so to actually have it exposed on an international level with evidence is helpful to everybody. It's helpful to us. It's helpful if President Trump says, look at this, let's expose this. That's huge. Then the Korean people themselves, they're forming hundreds of thousands of people. It's an amazing thing to speak to that big of a crowd. Hundreds of thousands of people that are rising up saying, we want to fight with America. Come and help us restore our republic. And that's what they're asking. So they see themselves as being fellow soldiers. They're not just saying, we're wimpy, come rescue us. They're saying, we're soldiers, we're ready to fight, let's do it together.
So they want to fight for their sovereignty, their country, their nation, much like we're trying to do here to protect elections.
Yes.
And yet there's a body in the way. Sounds like our Senate, sounds like our House. It sounds very precariously positioned to be the same. Now, you talked about AWEB. You talked about the development there. You talked about the people, but you were there. What is the tenor of the people, other than what we see, the outpouring and the masses gathering? But does it liken itself to January 6th and what we saw in the lead up, November, December, January of 2020?
Very much so, in some respects. For example, we all knew, in America, we all knew something was wrong. We didn't quite know what was wrong, but we knew something was wrong. And so that kind of generated this big gathering. But on the other hand, in Korea, they know what's wrong. They know their election was stolen from them. A bunch of them didn't even get to vote. So that is a strong motivating factor. Another strong motivating factor is that the churches there, they're very much a Christian nation. We had a massive Christian revival there. And after the Korean War, everybody north of the 38th parallel, they were slaughtered who was a Christian. So the churches, now realizing that they have a leftist...
By the communists?
Yes.
Okay.
And now the churches feel the existential threat because they've lost the presidency, they've lost their government. They're afraid that now the communism will come in and slaughter them too. They'll lose their freedom, and it's already starting to happen. They've already got legislation happening.
So China, North Korea, the grip continues. It just mulls right down through the country, takes over.